Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. I am your host, once again, Michael Roser. And welcome back, everybody. That's what I'm saying to Jared for the third time he's joining us here on the show. This is a fantastic individual. And if you haven't seen some of the prior interviews that we did to this show, I could have worded that better. Definitely go and check them out. They're absolutely fantastic and chock full of things to look into and research yourself, as the topics discussed are very expansive with Jared. And I'm delighted to have him back. I believe this is going to be a regular appearance that we're doing at least once a month to start. And I know all of you really enjoy him as well. So again, I'm honored to have him with us once more tonight. Guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight here at Dark Hour Paranormal. We are not going to waste time. The bio is in the description for those of you who are new to Jared Murphy here. So we're going to get started here and jump into some questions. If anybody has any questions themselves, please throw it into the chat. If you wouldn't mind, put it in some capital letters so I can see it a little bit more clearly. And just for those who are interested, the super chat is open. I'll throw that out there. And without further ado, let's get this train rolling. Guys, say hello to Jared, the resident paranormal guest. What's going on, my friend? That intro could have been better. Sorry.
No, I think the intro was great. It's, open up your super chat, collect them all. And and here I am. My action figure is not out yet. And I don't know what our catchphrases should be yet, but that would be that was fun. Either way, yeah, it's so super fun to be back on, and it's great that I'm excited about what we're doing and what we get to and how we talk about stuff and what it evolves into, and the people listening, they always have such good questions. And at the same time, I feel like the more we do it, the more it seems to keep ramping up. So yeah,
it really does.
Fun.
It definitely does have this compounding effect where we're going deeper into some of the topics that we've discussed in the past and dissecting them a little bit more within the time frame that we have, which is great because every time we do this, we have more time to actually sit and concentrate and focus on those topics. So, all right, let's start off nice and light here. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. Nice and light.
Nice and light, guys. All right. Hope you're sitting down with your nice cup of tea or coffee, whatever you drink. What are your thoughts, Jared, on some of the purported off-world materials that we may have? Intelligent metals, memory materials that refract light and create the illusion of invincibility. We're seeing some of these different technologies sort of leaked out into the public eye, not on purpose. I think most of these are in the way of sightings, sans perhaps the invisibility blanket that I think we are all aware of that the military has experimented with. What are your thoughts on some of these new materials coming out? And do you believe that what we're looking at today is really what we'll be using on a commercial level tomorrow?
Oh, in reverse, I think the commercial technology applications always come after the military's decided what they don't want to throw to us, like some sort of giant commercial recycling pit. Like, fine, let the scrappers find this one. You'll see it in your new smart television at the store and on Christmas, and that's it. Until then, if they have a use for it, we don't get it. I do find it interesting, though, that it never really gets talked about. That it was, I think when I started my book early on, 3-4 years ago, they were already doing nano paint, paint that had technology in it, which in this case specifically, it was for solar panels. Instead of panels, Well, and some people are aware of Tesla's roofing tiles.
Mhm.
So it looks just like asphalt tiles, but they're it's actually your solar panels. And there's a lot in that alone. And there was a technology over 30 years ago that allowed all plastic to be translucent, as in it glowed. So we're talking right out of Star Trek, walk down the hallways and the walls themselves could be dimmed or colored, or not just LEDs in the wall, but that electric current could actually pass through. And I can't remember the name of that inventor, but he's from Ohio. And we're talking, you don't need light fixtures anymore. You just decide what portion of the wall you want to light up or change.
Hmm.
But that's like the technological implications. One of the metamaterials, like I was wondering if you were referring to something like shungite, like off-world meteoric shungite. Was that one of
Um,
the materials?
well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I think that we are using some of those particular kind of materials that we have been able to perhaps procure ourselves or find in some of the technology that's being reverse engineered, or some of the metamaterials that have been given to us or we've gotten in another way.
Yeah, and I know people are aware of the water applications doing. Oh, by the way, is my volume up enough for you?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Oh, good. So yeah, so the water, like the filtration, a lot of people are using. Again, there's different kinds of shungite. It's the meteoric shungite that's from that Shunga area of Russia, and it is fascinating. I have a friend who's been experimenting and working with it for a while, and his applications are ranging into experiencing, based on his meters and readings, he does think that there is an effectiveness about doing filtration of waves and frequencies that you want to cancel. So I
Hmm.
think that's interesting. So I kind of blow some of this down to these alchemaic levels of understanding. Puppy dog tails, dragon's feet, and mix two parts, turn in a circle, drink it on the third, and suddenly you have a cure. And so a lot of times it's not a matter of just having a crystal or the fact that we can grow crystals. I mean, that should kind of freak everybody out a little bit. Like, oh yeah, you can buy a crystal growing kit. You can make really cool geodes. Well, why don't we exactly know why that works? We don't actually understand the mechanics of the science. It's we grow a pretty crystal and then we say it has a healing property or healing power. I think that's part of that shamanic, just a feel good about it. You grow it, but when it comes to like
Hmm.
cloaking, I do think, I don't know if you know that the Germans way back in the day hired artists. I only know this because I have a world renowned. We have an artist in the building that I work in named Steve Capiz, and besides being an internationally known oil painter, and he's in his he would gonna out me. He's in his 70s. But what's really interesting is he paints tanks from World War II, World War One, and he calls the factories, like he called Volkswagen to find out the right colors. What's interesting about this is that the Germans on their submarines, in fact, like the color that's behind me in this curtain, Steve did a painting of a color that artists have tried to duplicate for over 70 years now. It is a color that, despite not having any nanotechnology, allegedly, they were able to get artists to paint submarines a color that disallowed, that the color actually changed. It actually mutated, whether the submarine sunk underwater or whether it was on the surface. It was exactly that, cloaking technology. And the color Steve was able to reproduce in a painting once. So even if an artist accomplishes this color, it's frequently not able to be reduplicated, the effect.
Hmm.
And this is basic cloaking technology from the 30s and 40s. This is crazy because it's exactly that, acknowledging that there's something between light. This is frequencies and wave technology. It's not just an application of a physical color. It's what actually is then producing the mutations of light to refract through or appear translucent to an object in the sky, and we don't have any eyes on that at all. We're correcting our visual sight right now with either laser or with contacts or glasses, and we have developed technology enough now to have, everybody knows blue blockers. I mean, not to keep it stupid here, but there is blue blocker technology and different polarizations for general sunglasses, right? So
Hmm.
just imagine your eyes having enough nanotechnology in them or enough bioengineering where your interpretation of a skyline is such that you're looking at 15 cloaked ships in the air, and
Right.
you can see them or feel them, or again, you have a working pineal gland and you're not at 10 to 15% consciousness. So your interpretation of what you're seeing isn't just yours, it's that you're picking up uh, information from not only the ground but from people from the other side of you, almost like a
Hmm.
sonar, instead of even directly seeing what's in front of you because of your ability to uh, mentally project into the clouds and go, I am seeing a cloaked vehicle. It's actually because you're connecting to someone on the other side of the globe and information is passing. It may pass around, almost create like a bat, a sonar effect. But that's just, I wanted to throw on to something that we've talked about in the last few shows
Hmm.
about looking at us as more bioengineered. What we think of as natural are really machines. And we know that there's electromagnetic switching going on, that piezoelectric properties are happening at the cellular level. So are we really just like a safe moded computer? And are we capable of using that? But I'm not staying on metamaterials, am I?
No, that's fine. I mean, you've got me thinking a little bit too. I don't know if you were privy to this, but recently, this past week, there was a broadcast intercepted by an independent ham radio operator from American Airlines that the pilot essentially was a very short message down to ground control asking if they had any rockets or knew of any activity happening in where they were flying, and that a cylindrical object flew over the top of the airplane. Did you by any chance hear this at all?
No, sounds fascinating. This just happened.
Now, it's curious because we did find out after the fact, I think it was a couple of days later, that there were two memos issued to the entire company saying that they were doing some work with GPS interference technology, and that if anybody experienced any of that while they were out in flight, they were to report it and so forth. But this came out after the fact. Now, my question is, all right, so they knew that this technology was going on. They were testing something there, I think. Okay, I'm kind of deriving based on what we've seen here from this case. So they were aware of this. Now, it just so happened that one of the pilots, that was flying actually saw this go over his craft. Now, if it was a missile, it's been discussed many times why that really wouldn't be a possibility. Even talking about the barrier involving the craft itself, how large it is moving through the space that way, and how it would react differently than perhaps just kind of flying and going up and over. What kind of technology do you think we might be using to, you know, break these? I think they're more like tic tac shapes, is the way that he sort of described
Yeah.
it, as cylindrical object. What do you think these are? Are these more monitoring? What's the point of, and of course, I'm just throwing this out there in the way of conversation. What would be the point of having technology that could interfere with GPS as a whole? Or was it that they were doing something else and asking for the feedback if the opposite had occurred?
I think it's interesting in that we already know from you brought up the Tic Tac. We already know from that encounter from the colonel that discusses the story of flying alongside it that this is a vehicle that is actively jamming weapons radar while it's doing maneuvers that he stated without revealing any military technology. This is not something we can do. It is actively moving in a way and quite easily not engaging any GPS, any radar. It is basically jamming in what is considered an act of war. It is quite freely not able to be tracked or identified. So if the military has been working on identical technology, and I don't think that it's a misinformation campaign to say, uh, so obviously it's some alien vessel and it's doing that. It's not us. It's not us, because we've already established there are anti-gravity, or what we would call anti-gravity patents within the government that appear to be Navy and Air Force based. So we know, and like my publisher, Olaf Phillips, again, this is his background, the secret space program. This is something that we talk about a lot, where I always consider the military maybe 50 to 70 years ahead. I
Hmm.
have to quote Olav, and he thinks they're 100 to 150 years. And maybe on paper, my opinion is maybe on paper they're scratching out, 150 year from now lasers, but
But that's crazy to think about.
isn't it?
That's amazing to think about, that they could be that, even on paper, that they could be that far ahead. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't
Yeah.
interrupt you.
No, well, look at where we were with. I mean, you and I, not to out us, but like hey, there's this new thing called a desktop computer. And you're like, what are we gonna do with that? And Bill Gates. It's so funny that there's enough people out there now watching that they may not know. Early on, when Bill Gates was just starting a thing called Microsoft, he's famously quoted for saying, "We'll never need more than 512 memory." I mean, that was a statement.
How funny.
Like we couldn't even conceive of technology. So in the course of 40 years, look at where we've gone. And even in the practical applications of spintronics and quantum computing, we're holding quantum states, quantum computing, and in reference to memory, they've been able to make strides now, as far as like going from seconds to holding a stable quantum computing environment, to holding it now for hours and hours and hours, and doing it closer and closer to room temperature. And something I just read on Science Daily, because I told people I'm not, I'm just saying it's not like a personal endorsement, but Science Daily, specifically spintronics research, they have found a way to magnetize and use graphene conductors. And I was just reading a paper about it this morning, and that's exciting, because if they're unlocking, this ties into like what could fly overhead. Why would you be wanting to block GPS or anything else? Well, one, there's weapon systems controls issues, but at the same time, if we understand magnetism and frequencies and waves and what we really are, the way we really work within the universe scientifically, that, all right, Valerian, the Mac 3. And I missed the last one too. Who was the last one?
The last one was, let me just run back real quick because I saw it. It was Jim Robinson.
Sorry,
Thank you
Jim,
very much. Valerian and Jim Robinson.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that this technology, to be able to block, obviously being able to track something or shoot something down then, or follow it, that's one issue, especially if our technology commercially, just with people's eyes on it in general, 8 billion eyeballs that were not informed for the most part, and they're able to see a location quicker and quicker, whether it's drones or whether it's physically going there. People have the ability to travel and kind of say, hey, what's up? There's something in this lake. There's something in this location over here. I mean, we are this close to, just as a side note, before we get back into if you can take a graphene conductor and you can magnetize it in a way that you can't magnetize graphene. And now they're talking about these conductors being able to hold the quantum states they need to use as an affordable process and part of quantum computing. I think that's just one interesting microscopic step. And to do a technology where you're flying overhead, by the way, before I forget, that's like the new weather balloon. That's literally the new weather balloon statement. Hey, if anybody saw anything, because we couldn't keep track of it on our F-22, F-18 radar, and we couldn't do it with satellites. So if you saw one of the Mach 30 UFOs fly overhead, could you let us know? I mean, say that. Or what was the new weather balloon statement? It was, if you see a disc, we're flying an experiment, and let us know. Like, you don't know where your experiment went.
Yeah, let us know if you see us.
Because we don't know where we are. That's the craziest statement, right? That's what. That's a super. They've gotten smarter about. It was a weather balloon. It was swamp gas. That's that statement, right?
All these excuses. And that's what I'm calling them.
We have a huge, by the way, this time around, Michael and I have a huge question list. I'm keeping track of it. So on one hand, I want to digress. On the other hand, I want to get back to metamaterials and also ask you if there was a specific other material you were thinking of or had in mind. Because
Well,
I think
yep. Go ahead.
no, I just think of the meteoric shungite, and I know there's more than water filtration. It has other weird qualities, but I don't know of other materials that you were thinking of that besides the invincibility, specifically invincibility or invisibility. Sorry.
And well, maybe you never know. I mean, considering if you can't see it, you can't kill it. But that being said, no, that's fine. I know we have a list here, and I know how our conversations go. What we get to, we'll do on this show. If we don't, get to a couple of them, we'll move into the next. But that being said, I was thinking, especially in the way of that memory metal. And I remember the first time I saw anything like this was when Phil Schneider was carrying around a sample of this stuff. Looked like tinfoil. You crumple it up and whoop, pops right back out. Now, I understand that we do have certain
that's trippy.
Composites that are similar, but they don't achieve the exact same effect, at least, again, in what's been divulged to us. Have you seen anything in the way of that sort of material?
We have self-repairing plastics to a point, some metals. Though this is nanotechnology. In fact, I know we were going to talk more about nanotechnology. I want to get some specific examples for the next time we talk. But yes, there is self-repairing nano materials, and they are used commercially already. And some people might even think of that. You have a cracked windshield and you drop that liquid in and the crack goes away. It's 100% repaired and you have no more crack. But there are some self-repairing products that almost grow back. They really do. They replicate to an extent a damage, a scratch, a dent, and internal to the structure itself. This is commercial. This in reference to materials sciences has been around. I think applied. I think for about 20 years, maybe longer. But it's fairly complex. It's literally watching. It's not to the point where Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall and crawls back together like the Terminator 2, but somebody so much myself. But yeah, this is definitely a real thing. These nanotechnologies to actually self-repair are not going to take care of your cylinder head in your engine yet, but that would be that kind of direction where you crumple a car and your issue is to roll out of traffic and wait while your car repairs itself and unsnaps. That could be a thing.
That would be interesting, man.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about some of these ideas, especially what Russia has put forth recently, again, in the way of what we've seen with their flying car technology that, we still don't really know how this thing is propelled or anything, but we've seen, visuals of it. We've seen models and so forth. But, my concern is safety. What happens, when somebody collides up there, are we going to be popping out like our current pilots do today, or will there be some other sort of reparative technology that pieces the thing? I don't know how they're going to do this.
There are so many issues. One is don't fly over my house. You better stay on the air freeway, and it better not be over, I don't know, the nuclear power plant / the stadium / fill in the blank rush hour. I mean, flying cars is, well, look at our damage that we do just in pileups on the freeway. Think of that 120 car pileup in Texas during this last snowstorm.
Exactly.
No, I don't need a traffic jam and the same blizzard in the air, because how high are they flying during what kind of weather? That's the other issue, is that we're talking about the Jetsons.
Yes, exactly. We're talking about the Jetsons here. That's what a lot of people think we might actually have in our hands very soon.
Yeah. And
you don't think so?
Do you trust them to park anywhere near work? Like, where?
Listen, I don't even trust myself to drive that damn thing. I mean, let alone anything else. I mean, I imagine it would have to be automated to some degree, possibly.
That's even better.
I don't know. Yeah, I know, right? Well, we have troubles already.
In between drone strikes, I fly Uber Air, and I'm in Iraq on one joystick. Oop, I hit the wrong joystick, and I'm also, your cabbie for the remote control plane that I'm not there for. And maybe limit them on I get the idea of you want to get somewhere quicker, but I don't see, just like right now, the commercially available drones that you can buy for $1,500 or
Mhm.
whatever, the ones for your yard. I do not think it's a good idea for human beings to be. We don't build homes. This is exactly a technology issue that I've talked about with electricity. We look at electricity, we don't even we barely talk about Tesla, and he was one of the brilliant ones. We don't talk about uh, any Steinmetz. We don't talk about the people that are truly the geniuses of the era that invented it. And you go down a boulevard in a city and you have half a tree gone with just one wing out one side. That's our idea of technology with electricity. A telephone wire that's literally nailed to a dead tree, a telephone pole, and we string it to houses where we plug in what was once a $12,000 plasma flat screen, which is now $50 on Black Friday, and watch shows from basically what used to be the same telephone pole for Morse code.
Unreal when you break it down like that, though, honestly.
Isn't it trippy? Like, you can see in the home. So I do historical remodeling, and you're in a home that still has gas lines, and I have literally tapped into gas lines that were still live from gas lamp lighting that was in their hallways.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, that's still a thing. That was still there in the 1800s. You had, late 1800s there in Summit, Grand Avenue. There were homes, and the gas lines that run that seem like, oh, that's a dead conduit. And they're like, no, that's a gas line to an old gas lamp that would have been on in the hallway. And then later it's capped off, and people think it's old electrical conduit or something.
Mhm.
And it's still that gas line. And then you think about those poles outside running electricity to homes. That's 120-year-old. We haven't redesigned our homes and the way we live to accommodate not only a flying car. It's not about protecting from just impact. I can think of more than enough shows. All right, we'll throw one out there, like Robotech, for all
Mhm.
those older nerds. The aliens Zentrani come to Earth, and they look down and they go, what are they doing with their city designs? They have no concept of spatial bombardment. Like, why are they just scurrying around the planet? And I do think that we don't design for our health. We don't have living environments that are conducive to positive brain entrainment, to how we hear
100%.
music, and the energies. Yes, people get it. Point the front of your house to the south so you get the sun. That's one elementary part of it. And then wind shear. Architects figured out that, there's so much wind in your area, it pulls on your roof, like a straw trying to suck it up. So you have to have so many fasteners, and you have to have so much kind of roofing material. Like in Florida, you have to have 1-inch plywood, and it has to have hurricane straps, and there's all these things. But we don't think further about how those energy plays, not just in the construction of the home, but how you and I interact. Like, how could we build and design not just our homes, our walkways, our pathways, not just a woo-woo feng shui, but how do we start to connect back to that old engineered soil? How do we reconnect
Mhm.
the earth, and how we travel to and from, including these cars that were, like you said, these air cars? How are we going to manage the construction process to handle that kind of impact? We know what crashed planes in neighborhoods look like now, and it's not about what people can and can't afford for their personal structures. It's how do we start building communities that match the biotechnology of what we're rediscovering about movement and being paleo and eating real food, to a lifestyle that includes a structure that is communal with that. It's a bigger subject, but it includes not having crap fall on your home and crush it into a small pile, or being earthquake proof, like polygonal construction.
Mhm.
That's important, or using stone spheres and protecting whole communities. But trees, the way they grow, the way they connect to each other, the plants, the things that you grow in your yard. And all I can picture is a telephone pole with half of a branch left of a big, beautiful tree that gets cut down, because apparently no trees can live through whatever the latest bugs is. We had giant elm trees. Nah, they're gone. That was,
Yeah, I know.
and then emerald ash, the emerald boar ash borer, whatever that little It's like, well, weren't there ash trees before? Like, weren't there elm trees before? But our only solution is to cut down the biggest trees on the block and start over with little weeds that whatever they planted now in the Twin Cities puts a syrup on everybody's vehicles. It's not about convenience to your car. It's a disconnect between how the natural world's really a technical world. It's a bioengineered connection to us. And there's a reason we gravitate towards walking around the lake or going hiking. And we just don't incorporate this fully. So, yes, we have technologies like flying cars, and they're just not up for the task right now, I don't think.
Now, that's very comprehensive, and I appreciate that answer to no end. I have something interesting here submitted to me by GameVet02. This was a sighting that he had some time ago during a thunderstorm, is what he was mentioning. And this particular object that he drew a picture of, what he saw, is very interesting. And I'll be honest, it's not something that I've seen in our normal sightings with the Tic Tac and the sports model and so forth. Do you mind taking a look and giving me your thoughts on this?
Yeah. And I guess while you're pulling it up, first time I went to contact in the desert, I got out by Big Rock or Giant Rock, and only people from California, I'm sorry, get mad when I say it wrong because it's either Big Rock or Giant Rock. And all right, that's but I saw the triangular ones, and I saw the ones with the three lights,
the TR3B looking things.
Yeah, and I didn't see one. I saw like 8. And as long as we were willing to sit there, we must have sat there and looked out the windows like 3 hours. They stayed in that area. It was crazy.
I have to believe that, something like the TR3B, the way that it's described, it is probably something that's capable of breaking certain, how do I want to say this? Going higher than any other craft that we may have. Again, this is within the knowledge that we have. God, it's so weird to talk subjectively. But, I would think that this might even be able to traverse some of the upper spheres, perhaps, just outside of our natural sphere on Earth, and, still be able to dip down again and land on the ground. It's very possible. And I wouldn't see why that wouldn't be a goal of some of these engineers, to create something that was hybridized in the respect that it could be in both different atmospheres, or possibly looking forward, perhaps this small vessel being capable of traveling great distances to other planets and so forth. What are your thoughts on this object you see here from our friend GameVet? You ever seen anything like this before? Looks like a horseshoe.
No. Yep. No, and based on the direction it's being drawn, I'm assuming it's, I don't know why, but my impression, even though it looks like it's going up, to me, it looks like it's coming forward. So for me, I'm looking at it coming forward towards us. And I don't know if it's directional or not, like if it's just can fly any direction. It's an interesting why the object would look the way it does when you don't have to account for gravity anymore. These systems, like, what does an anti-gravity, what does a vortex on, what is a system based on Victor Schauberger's work look like? What is a vortex implosion versus explosion? What does that look like? What is the gravitational effects of where do you put the engine? Up, down, middle? How much of the mechanics of flight are required? And what are the speeds? And again, what about weaponization? Is it U-shaped? It's more what do weapons look like on something like this? Why? What are they? When you were talking, I was thinking about the technologies in these flashes of what we witness. Like in this example, you see it, and I always wonder, what are all the different applications? What are we seeing? Who are these people's rivals? I don't assume that everybody has an enemy, but what are the things that they're worried about? What is the ship going to encounter, whether in our airspace or within outer space? So the design, to me, and the functionality of these designs, knowing more and more that we know also about frequencies and the way all of this works, not just for propulsion or weaponized scalar type systems, but now it's okay, well, what kind of resonance does it have for how is it projecting? How does it cloak? I mean, to me, a refracted surface, and not just. So I brought up the paint off the German submarines because although the paint was a chameleon, it wasn't specifically a nanotechnology as we know it. It was mixing the right colors that reacted against natural sunlight.
Hmm.
And here you got to wonder the metamaterial, the actual material sciences to build a structure like this, besides heat and movement and speed, it's how do they flex? How is it that if I think more and more when we get these glimpses of all UFOs that everyone's listening about, I think it's super important. Um, Super sticker. I like the super sticker, by the way, before I forget. Um, from
Thank you, B.
Beast.
Strom SNES? Strom? Is that
Oh,
a
no.
Norwegian? Laurier?
I what can I say? I'm in Minnesota. I should know this because of all our Nordic backgrounds. But our I got French and a little bit of English and mostly Irish. So other than a lifetime in Minnesota with a lot of Swedish
Yeah, I was
around
just gonna say it
or
might be
Nordic
Swedish. Shit.
or
It's
well
called-
anything Nordic, But
I'm
hi,
Swedish.
I like
I'm Norwegian too.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah good puppy.
And
So
Polish. You see the eyebrows? That's the Polish eyebrows. Yeah, I could probably take flight with these damn things. Sorry. Anyway,
nice. I don't know what do you think of this thing?
when I look at this, okay. So there are a couple things that go through my head, and I'm going to jump into the world of woo. For the moment here. Now, Al Balick, in some of his time travel experiences, had mentioned that at some point, and I don't press me for the years he went back, but it was 3,000 and something. Okay.
All right.
Two different jumps he made, but the further jump that he made, he was witnessing cities that actually were levitated above the Earth's surface, and excuse me, and this was to, I guess, protect the Earth's surface and not necessarily interfere so much within the ecosystem and so forth. Although we were still intimately tied in and a part of it. I'm thinking of this because we hear even in certain people's theories or channelings from different beings, Daryl Anka and people like that, John Trinity Martin, they talk about there being civilizations in crafts that are in our atmosphere, even in our immediate atmosphere and very high above, but they have a technology wherein they're cloaking this civilization that's literally living within this space. When I'm looking at this, for whatever reason, it reminds me of the building that I can't remember. It's off the coast of Japan. I think it was an old coal mining community which had hundreds of thousands of people living in it and is now vacant and has been for I think about
Yeah, the
20,
one in the
25
James
years,
Bond
something like
movie,
that.
right? The
Is
one in
I
the
think
James
it
Bond
was.
movie? Yeah.
Yes, I think it was used for that. Yes, thank you. I can't remember the name of it, so if anybody remembers in the chat, go ahead and throw that in, and I'll correct myself. But it reminds me of that in the way that there are, so many layers. It looks like some sort of high-end condominium complex, some sort of futuristic condominium complex. Again, I'm stretching this. This is just what my eye first saw. Maybe there's some sort of paneling that's on the top. Dealing with solar power, who knows? You know what I mean? But that being said, it doesn't look like any sort of conventional craft that would fly using Newtonian physics, even within its environment. Yes, it's horseshoe shaped. Yes, there's less wind resistance at the God, I can't talk again. Less wind resistance at the front. If it was moving forward, I could see that. But again, the aerodynamics not really reflective of anything conducive in the way to actually flying something that perhaps is a metamaterial sort of craft.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up too about
Thank you, Doug.
the idea of people out already in this atmosphere, this area. And we've talked about this a little bit, but the Black Knight satellite gets brought up sometimes, and I know we've talked about, everybody I think knows about this high orbit ancient satellite that could been up there 18,000 years, maybe longer, we don't know, but we do know that it's not the only one. I had a good conversation with Eric von Daniken. He and I talked about this, and I wish I've not revisited this with him, but he said there was at least 6 to 9 other ones that were similar age, similar conditions, and that that's the thing that we don't consider right offhand, is that if our timeline is not correct and we have a highly advanced ancient society, they would have already put up satellites, they would have already had moon bases, they would have already had them maybe at Mars, and they would have also sent out satellites to other places in the galaxy, and they might
Mm-hmm.
not be made of metal. They could be restructive, some sort of a non oxygen breathing, bio, self repairing, sun or solar using energy system that it's going to go dormant as it travels in a trajectory towards another star. As it hits another solar system, again, how the cycle of it sending communications back and forth. We've had these signals, these FM signal reaches Earth, and it's not a dark, it's not a dwarf, it's not a black hole, it's an organized signal, and we assume that it's external, that it's from something else. Well, it could be a satellite, there could be ships in orbit, there could be items that we think are foreign to this planet. We have to consider, based on the scary level of technology in the ground that we keep finding, that it's already a prior civilization's dead satellite, or still
Mm-hmm.
functioning with no one to communicate to. And ships like that, whether it's that, or again, we know that there's military ships that are clearly way more advanced, and they are definitely, you know, they're playing with us a little bit, or they're indifferent, I guess, to us. Maybe that's more accurate.
That's
Jared?
possible. It's very possible that they could be indifferent to us. But I think, again, when we really reach back, I think that there's quite a connection between us and many different extraterrestrial species. Again, it's something that we've spoken about to some degree, but, harboring their DNA or, something along those lines. There's a difference between the physical connection and the spiritual connection, if you want to call it that, I think.
Yeah.
But for the sake of time here, I'm going to move on to the next question, because we just spent 40 minutes on that question and I could keep going. I know that much. Each one of these questions could be a show. Never, guys. So, all right. So, are you familiar with the Dulce Wars? Dulce.
So they get on my radar, and the only problem I have, it actually, I'm going to combine this with one other thing that totally fascinated me, because my second book is on rock cut ruins and the extent. So not only do we have a worldwide megalithic, polygonal, and sphere technology, but there are rock cut ruins that are just as advanced in their size and scale and their location. Along with it, are these underground tunnel systems that immediately led me 4 years ago to see truckers sending photos of tunnels that they were allegedly trucking in that were not public tunnels. They were
Interesting.
and so we're talking a world, at least a countrywide grid of military freeway systems that were being used. And you had asked me, so two things. One, are there underground military bases that are extensive and huge? 100%. I know this from personal firsthand accounts from multiple sources. No brainer. Do we have underground missile bases? Yes. Is that?
How are we digging these, though? I mean, because we've heard
Oh
of
yeah.
the technology called the subterrane, which is apparently nuclear powered, and essentially the effect is, in a nutshell, guys, when it bores through the stone, it actually turns it into a molten rock, wherein it then presses it up against the side, creating a very smooth glass-like surface on the inside. So you have the integrity of the hull held up by the material that's being expelled without having to remove any excess material, as we do through mine shafts and so forth. How do you think they're digging these really deep underground tunnels and bases?
So one of the things that I said earlier, and I think it gets lost on a lot of people, is when I say, let's say Olav's right, and the military is 100, 150 years in advance. But let's say they're only 70. One of the things that gets lost is, what was the first year that they were 70 years advanced? Because at some point we weren't. And I think it all hovers around summer. I think around World War One, we were getting a clue. But by World War II, I think the governments were fully way more fully conscious of what I think was once hidden by other secret societies and long-term institutions like the Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church is the oldest institution on the planet. There's no way they're not aware, having sent missionaries with every expeditionary force that's ever existed since, with that whole thing about South America and Latin America and, well, you name it. But I do think that the technology to create that boring, if that is what it is, I find it fascinating that you have Eric von Daniken meeting Buzz Aldrin in South America, quite famously, to start going through some of these rock cut, crazy, weird looking tunnels.
That is
And
weird.
unless they were found during, they come up with the atomic bomb, or at least it's publicly come up with. And as they're re-engineering that, they are also realizing that, well, we need to build bunkers. And very quickly, I think underground military bases were being, I think there's always a common sense around, if you're going to have like the Germans had a factory for planes and rockets all underground. There are many examples of large underground tunnel systems that were even thought of in this period. So in the last 100 years, is it possible that as organizations, now more public, secret, established government organizations, locate rock cut ancient ruins, and then they have their own military archaeologists that go do that work, that figure out, well, it appears that a very large advanced ancient human society dug very extensive underground tunnels, and it's easy to chalkboard the issues. Solar flares, asteroids, meteors, scalar weapons. There's a lot of reasons to want to be underground and not be in direct line of sight of a giant microwave that melts you. So let's not be that bag of popcorn, everyone. How's that for a graphic? Who's having dinner right now while we're talking?
Who's having popcorn as a snack?
Is it really buttery? Because we're going to go back to the popping statement. And then, so that whole tunnel thing, yeah, right. The tunnel says, so the idea is maybe they picked up the technology as they were collecting other technology, and the idea of doing those, like the De Beers miners, the stories of, it's always De Beers miners find a tunnel system that appears to be cut, goes on 22 miles, and the next day it's cut up, or it's cut off as, don't go down that tunnel, let's go a different direction. Is it because they've run into, again, something ancient, or is it because they've run into something that's more modern? And I know from direct knowledge, this is interesting, it's not from some internet source, that there are very ancient tunnel systems. I know, and again, Eric von Daniken and Buzz Aldrin. You don't get Buzz Aldrin to go somewhere if it's not super interesting. There's just no going around that. That wasn't just, hey, Buzz, there's a big tunnel. Are you free on Thursday?
Yeah, this will be a quick vacation for you.
Right, like going to Antarctica again. Buzz Aldrin, former presidents, John Kerry, the leader of the Church of the Orthodox Church, which is said to be the true center of the church. They all go to Antarctica in a month because they like penguin mating. I mean, they're there to study.
Something's happening there. There's no way around it.
You cannot make that up. You can't. Yeah, they're just
Buzz Aldrin, the Orthodox Catholic priest, and an ex-president go to Antarctica. It's the beginning of a great joke,
isn't it? And then in the end, the bartender said, "Why the long face?" and they're down there. It's not like it's like Patagonia's discovered a new nanotechnology to keep their windbreaker warm. It's not. That's not what happened. So the rock cutting is really interesting because the tunnel systems under. I saw a video. You asked the question to me also was one of the things we talked about prior to the show was, have you seen any evidences of underground tunnel systems that are known modern? So here I am doing my research for my first book, and I come across all these YouTube videos of truckers swearing, and I'm looking at an 8-lane underground. It's longer than a tunnel. They're definitely American, and they're definitely in what appears to be an underground road system. I couldn't even point you to I haven't tried to look for them again, but they clearly said, I'm on an underground freeway. I'm recording myself because this freeway exists and it's part of the network in America for the military, and I'm running supplies for whatever, just in a regular 18-wheeler. So,
Hmm.
okay, publicly we know Tesla's doing the one that's going to be the super tube from LA to Vegas.
He's been
And
working on that.
so it's not like, how big of a stretch would it be to take a nuclear submarine and then make it a nuclear digging device that is superheating the rock around it, and like you said, creating its own uh, structural super support and digging simultaneously. I just don't see it not being difficult to do. So as a general answer, yeah, sure, possible. Do I know from these other examples that there I've seen video, but I can't tell you. Maybe the trucker was in some known tunnel somewhere that I just don't know of in the United States, and he just wanted to make a video. But I saw more than one. I think I got caught on that for a minute because it's hard not to want to go down the what's going on with our secret military programs, what's going on with modern technology. So it's a fun road to go down. But for me, I was trying to dig to the rock cut ruins at Buzz Aldrin and Eric Von Daniken, and what, because there's rock cut tunnels in the Andes. There are rock cut tunnels, and I don't mean chiseled, I mean the hardest stones on earth. And they're in not just in the Andes, like people think, Ollantaytambo, Tiwanaku, in the Andes mountain range, all the way to Turkey and underground. There's rock cut cities, but they're all over Europe, and they're not just primitive. They seem to be very well done, like Petra. People think of the building that was in the Last Crusades. There are structural spaces there that cubically, more than one. Many of them are over 300,000 cubic square feet, cut open into single rooms,
Wow.
and not. It's just not easy to do that, but it's not possible. But it's not likely that it was done by primitive culture, and
Hmm.
not based on the ruins that are there. So I think it's interesting, though, to also account for my first. I can only say that of some of the firsthand accounts that I've gotten of rock cut ancient underground storage spaces or warehouses, they exist, and they exist in the United States. There is the very well publicly known one in Utah of a shopping mall being built on what appeared to be for sure a tens of thousands a year old a tiled floor. I'll have to look up the name of that again, but that one you could Google and find fairly quickly.
It
They ended up,
reminds me of Denver Airport.
yeah, they end up they end up building a supermarket where it was definitely a tile floor, and it was ancient, and they just destroyed it. But the idea of underground, not only tunnel systems in modern military or highway systems, interconnectivity and preparedness for worldwide disaster, that's here. And then you have ancient systems that I think they're mimicking that are continued to be explored by um, modern archaeologists that are assigned to look at these things that are thousands of years old, because humans have been dealing with these kind of disasters for millenniums. We're not a society that has lineally come to where we are now. We're rediscovering ancient technology. But
Now coming back to the Dulce Wars,
oh yeah,
for those who aren't familiar, very quick overview: there is reportedly an underground base that goes very deep under the levels of a mesa in New Mexico, Dulce, and at some point, I think it was the 70s or 80s, it might have been even later, I can't remember now, there was some sort of conflict between an extraterrestrial species and our side, wherein there again was a lot of violence that occurred, and something like 62 was the number I heard of human bodies, scientific bodies, were pulled out of this, as well as a myriad of alien bodies. And some of the locals will actually tell you that were around at that time that they either witnessed it or they heard about it from their parents. And so there's this whole folklore, if you want to call it that, or legend, that goes around the mesa over in Dulce. But how plausible, in your opinion, is a large scale conflict underground without anyone really being alerted on the surface? I think you're muted.
You were right, because a train is going by, so I thought I wouldn't let you hear that. But now everybody can hear the train going by, which is about 30 feet out my studio window.
Oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah. So I think it's very realistic to have all sorts of things happen in caves. I myself have done a little splunking. I know I talk about climbing. I definitely love climbing. I'm not an actual splunker, but I have participated in going into some ruins that were foolhardy without testing for monoxide, slash at least bring my canary. I didn't do it. Um, it is easy to be underground. It echoes like you wouldn't believe, but it is also it's definitely silent.
I would figure.
And I don't doubt for a second, well, we already know we have very deep cut military bases. That work, I think, accelerated, which caused a lot of the archaeological work that accelerated for deep underground study. I do think that all accelerated during the nuclear era. So a lot of, I think, of what they ran into is you have ancient advanced humans that have been cutting through rock like it's butter for it for tens of thousands of years. And we have that because of Baalbek, because we have 1,200 to 3,000 ton stones that have been stacked, and not just stacked, but finely cut, the intricacies of polygonal masonry. We've gone over all that. But for them to dig deep rock cut, massive underground structures would be zero issue. And having enjoyed a lack of contact with the surface survivor dwellers of whatever we are, the dynastic peoples, the ones that took over Egypt and became modern day Egypt, and the Mayans and the Aztecs, the Olmecs, the Toltecs, fill in the blank. Those are all societies that came and picked up the pieces of an ancient megalithic culture, but it's on the surface. There are forests. There are eyewitness accounts of, well, a lot of UFO activity on Lake Titicaca, and we can name all the shows where it's like, well, there's a lot of UFO activity in this area or that area, etc. But if you discount military UFOs, again, you have these locations where they you can't follow them to 1,000. They're whatever they're doing at the bottoms of the oceans, or the ability to hide there. It's a dangerous place. We don't have a lot, even with military. We don't have a massive fleet that can hit the lowest points in our waters without being turned into a giant little crumpled can. And so it's easy for them to hide. And I think being rock cut, would it be easy? Yes, we're digging deep cut. We're doing these things for military purposes. Could they tap into an ancient ruin or accidentally drill into what is a society that is part of these so some people think they're aliens, interdimensional, that they're from somewhere else, or could it be ancient advanced humans that have been here, still terrestrial, very advanced, and you just made the mistake of drilling into right into the middle of something that they were not prepared for you to drill into. And
like
so
Phil Schneider.
Right. So, and at that point, what do you do for a society that with impunity, we have too many cases outside of military, we have too many cases of abduction. That was something that, is actually after our show tonight, that's something that this Geraldine that we were just talking about on Conflict Radio, she's been abducted 26 times. And
oh my God, does she remember all those experiences?
Starts at age 5. She has been that it's pretty crazy because she's in her best memory, they've implanted and she's had children like 26 times. And and she's met some of them, but she does work with recovery, with hypnosis. She works with survivors of abduction, and these are not, some are military, they're very aware of it. This is not just all out there. She's dead serious.
Not for nothing, she didn't incubate these hybrids in her body, and if she did, it wasn't for a very long period of time, right? Because 26. Okay.
Yeah, they took them back. I think it's like 26, and she's heard hundreds of survivor stories. She works with people who have had similar experiences. It's not just women, it's men too. And there's no way, some of them are military, but there's no way all of them are military. So we have people on this planet possibly highly advanced ancient humans that are taking people, experimenting with them at will, taking and for some reason still in need of dealing with our DNA. And they're using it. And I think it's realistic then to think, to me, that's rather primitive still. I'm making a lot of assumptions, I guess, without talking about it as to why they would take our DNA and they can't just print what they need or just take a raw strand and turn it into whatever they want, just like we're starting to do with stem cells.
Right.
There is a nanotechnology, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't fathom what it would be like. So is it very realistic to have two societies accidentally run into each other and have it not end well, where they're already without permission taking people without their, to do whatever the hell they want with, and now they're you get a modern military running into a base where they can't just clear out quickly, or they have to handle the people who witnessed what they're doing or seen, and then that's all realistic, but all these accounts, we don't have it sucks. We have no photos, we have no there's no actual evidence, there's
no hard evidence to support that. Yeah.
But is there straight up hard evidence of rock cut ruins, straight up hard evidence of archaeological work for that, straight up evidence of firsthand? I have experienced firsthand accounts of all of these ruins being real, being there for exactly what appears to be disaster relief, being occupied, reoccupied, the rock cut tunneling systems. I mean, there it is, black and white. Color television, Von Daniken and Buzz Aldrin going to rock cut, laser cut tunnels. And now, again, those mysterious trips down Antarctica. So I think it helps confirm Admiral Byrd. It helps confirm what we buzz around. This isn't just a 100th monkey collective consciousness, us wishing it to be true. These are real. These underground systems are real, and they represent a much more, again, it's not that they just cut through hard rock or made really square cuts. It looks laser cut, or like you said, could it be nuclear powered, and could it be a drilling system that's in modern ways? That is it an adaptation of an ancient technology? They reverse engineered it and thought, yeah, we're going to do it like this, or is that the best they could do, or is it ancient, or both? This stuff is happening, and if anybody out there right now listening is aware of the trucker videos that I'm talking about, do you know what I'm talking about? These trucker videos of some of these like runs on military underground freeways out in the West. Have you seen any of these?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen any though. I've heard people have talked about it, and I've seen posts and so forth, but I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, and the reason I'm saying I wanted to give people a date so that they could maybe in their own minds. I saw those. So when I start going to look, and I have finally, I'm going to put down on paper, and as the book's evolving, I just came across the videos, and it's like, well, are they adapted from rock cut ruins from ancients? Are they modern? Are they mimics? I was fascinated in the ruins, and so it's truckers. It looks like nighttime. It looks like a 8-lane freeway, 4 going one direction, 4 going the other.
That's wide.
Oh, yeah. It was not small, and I'm like, there can only be so many places where I thought even if it was like a 2-mile long tunnel through a mountain, I'm like, this is going to be easy to distinguish. But the YouTube on it was definitely, the narrative was the man describing that this was definitely military. This is definitely a private freeway system, and it was definitely connecting, he said, hundreds and hundreds of miles. And then I did a little further research, and again, what I read was it went coast to coast. They go in multiple directions, but I just know that this was more west, and I couldn't take the time to verify that, but I saw it.
I have to concur with Patrick Vaughn when it comes to some of these tunnels underground. If I was ever given access, my claustrophobia is through the roof for some reason. And he had mentioned he'd be a little too claustrophobic. Although I think that in the end, I would have to get over it, because I'd be standing right at the precipice, and there's either you're going in or you just travel all this way for nothing, and you're going to lose an opportunity. But, that being said, and stop me if we already talked about this, because I can't recall when we had the subject of the hollow earth. Admiral Byrd's story, okay, I mean, he indicates that there is a real hollow space cavern within the Earth, and again, kind of implies that this space is large enough that we might consider the Earth as a celestial body to be hollow in itself. My thought is that we're a very cavernous planet. We have many caverns, and that's probably extends very far down. And we've seen evidence of microbial life at the very least existing on some of these super vents, superheated down in very dark, dank areas, but still moisture is there and water is there to keep this life alive. What's your thoughts on that? And again, if I've already asked you this, you just let me know and we'll go on to the next thing. But what's your thought about that and in the respect to how cavernous this planet may be, wherein it may be interpreted by stepping into one of these caverns that the Earth itself is hollow because of the enormity?
Yeah, I liked I may have mentioned, and I'm just going to say it again because I think Eric Von Daniken's just a ride on this, but I watched him on a panel and he was the last person to answer the question, do you think the Earth is hollow? And I loved the reaction. This was at Joshua Tree. And so some people may have seen it because you can get the recordings, but this is Contact, and it's Eric Von Daniken sitting at the end of the counter, and I think at this point he's 86 or 85, and he goes, "Poppycock, rubbish! The Earth is not hollow. Are there portions of it hollow? Yes, but." It was great. He got more red than it was already at 114 degrees, and I can't help but agree that, like, okay, take me there, because allegedly it's open to the public. We can't fly there yet. We can travel there by ground. And what I am excited about, I think I might have mentioned this, is Gary from Everything Imaginable. Apparently, for the first time in years, I think one of the grandkids of Admiral Byrd is going to talk to him. And
Yes.
I don't know if that interview has taken place yet, but um, we're still planning a Grand Canyon expedition because I'm sick of talking about, because again, we climb, I have all the gear. We want to explore some of the cave. There's literally no accounting for the cave systems in Grand Canyon for the whole Egyptian thing. There's some things that we keep talking about that aren't happening. By the way, was that the same dog picture that we just saw in the corner, or is that a new one? Because I caught that
That was
super chat.
Beastromus SNES once again. Thank
Yes.
you very much, guys, for all of your generosity tonight. I'll just say that out real quick.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in. I think it's really possible that, especially with those ruins in Russia, there is definitely underground systems that appear that were once part of that, whether they're on the ley lines, the pyramid grid system, the other, again, everyone has to account for giant metal buildings, other materials that have been adapted and destroyed or reused into new structures. So we can't just think rock cut ruins, megalithic polygonal blocks, stone spheres. It's not all stone. It's not just the one pillar of Delphi, or I'm sorry, the pillar of Delhi, that's all iron and it's super pure. It's not just one item. There's just too many out of place one-offs to not go, wow. It's not just one Antikythera device. Those are all contemporary conversations that we can go down that rabbit hole. It's more than that. So this whole underground system, is it possible that they were lined with metals and materials and cities? Absolutely. So we just have to cut to the chase of how many dog sled teams do we need from the Iditarod? If they're not going to let us fly there, if they're not going to stop us, why it's time to start getting it out there in the ether to tell the people listening. I'm willing to go. We're planning the trip to the Grand Canyon because there are areas we can climb, and I'm not going to enter caves that we're not supposed to enter, but I'm going to take photos, and
Yes.
we're gonna climb to them, and right away we're going to know, no matter what the erosion level is, we're going to be able to see if there's any rock cut or indications. There's work I'm planning on the East Coast, and there is a South American archaeological trip again that's being planned. So for me, there's this discussion, And then for those out there listening, why aren't we all going? So we know where it is. We know that we can. Yes, it's over 1,000 miles from the closest landing point. I get that. The Iditarod takes a long time. It's done with dogs. I don't know if this trip is really traversable without sleds and dogs. If that's the only way
Yeah.
to do it, clearly it's not a short distance at 1,000 miles or 1,100 miles. But if it's true and it's not off limits, I think it's time for this show, us, you, me, to plan some of these return expeditions. So I just want it out there for people to get there. This is not an undoable trip. We know where it is. We know where the entrance is. We know that we are allegedly allowed to go there. So yes, and this is me quietly asking for those with bigger pockets that there's no reason not for us to go do this. I mean, you can buy a cool car, a cool house, but who wants the bragging rights to go back to the giant cavern that may be the entrance to a second sun and an underground city? Anyone?
Can you imagine? Yeah, no, that's a great sell, honestly. I mean, I would go in a heartbeat. You kidding me? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd have to learn.
I would take a picture and blow that up and put that on the wall, you know.
Oh yeah.
How's
and then we all end up like Deathlove, I think it is. Deathlove Pass there. I don't know what the hell happened. Even with the new evidence that came out, but man.
Oh yeah? What happened?
Did you hear about that?
Oh.
Well, they were talking about, and there's this whole article. I can actually send it to you later on. Very interesting. They feel, given the evidence and the revisiting of that scene, that they were caught by a freak avalanche that was caused under the perfect conditions. The way that they were sitting right on the spot that they were, there was something unstable about that. Again, there's a specific name for this phenomenon, and it's eluding me at the moment. But it still didn't account for why eyes were removed, tongues were cut out, and some of the other physical trauma anomalies that were recorded on the bodies themselves. So, yeah, no, it's a very curious case that I don't believe is conclusive yet.
They got their tongues cut out too?
This was mentioned as well. Yeah, eyes were extracted, tongues were cut out. They were, I mean, if you want to talk about them being half clothed, maybe they were caught by surprise and they were running out of the tent to, avoid this coming on to that place that they were. So, I mean, there are some things that could be explained in the way of the avalanche theory that they're proposing, but there are still, and they did acknowledge this, a few anomalies that they can't fit within that puzzle.
The great thing about being on the internet and or spreading it wide and far is to build in some redundancy to a trip that doesn't get, I don't know, I don't want to sink to the bottom of the ocean. It was a tsunami that got him. The whole expedition disappeared. We don't know what happened. I don't want to be that expedition, but I do think that there are some mysterious areas where we have tons of caves in the Grand Canyon that some of them appear to be very intentional. And I have yet to run into a geologist other than, ancillary data. No one's ever said, yeah, well, this is this and this is that. People get, of course, excited about the adobe constructions that are within the walls of the canyon that have to do with people that we know. But what we don't have is any really good collection of the caves, of their locations, and we see them in photography, but it's time to go back. And the team that I've been working with now since Gary and I we started talking about it, we're like, no, we're going to do this because fortunately I work with some incredibly talented route setters and people who can do the expeditionary work to set up the routes. But the question then is where are we going? What routes are obtainable as far as exploring, and what photos can we take? And I think the Admiral Byrd thing, for as much as this keeps coming up, it is a cave that we have permission to go to. They just took away what appeared to be the practical way to do it. And I think that with some planning, and when you have a scope of work and a project plan for something like this, I do think that the money is there to transport the vehicles that are needed to, tracked vehicles that can get to X point. We could set up a relay system. The logistics of doing this is not inconceivable. This isn't going to Mars. It's definitely remote. it's definitely a difficulty, but we got there in the 40s or 47 and 49. I think we can get there again. And I understand that there's scientists there. The obvious point is we're told we can't go there. Well, we have dialogues and shows like this. So why don't we just see how far we can get and plan as far as we can with the correct equipment, and then let the powers that be stop us? And I don't mean cut our tongues out and end up in an avalanche, but I want to see the magical resistance that comes up, you know. And I'm happy if the resistance is like $100 million shows up in my bank account. Then
Did
you know,
just forget all about the idea entirely, huh?
What idea? I don't know what idea you're talking about. The plan was to go see every single amusement park in America. That was our plan.
Now they talked. If you're looking at the Admiral Byrd story and what came after, there is some speak about some sort of conflict that occurred over an opening there. What do you know about that in your research? What have you come across? Because it hasn't been very much that I've seen in the way of detail with that, other than it's been closed off in some way, shape, or form, and there's no way that we can even recognize it or enter it either way. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think anything. I know there's some Google map of that area that we know where that cave entrance is, but okay, somebody give us a photo. Anybody?
Right.
We don't. So again, we're shooting in the dark on internet speculation on a place to remind everyone I believe we have access to. So next month when we're talking, for all of those, we talk about self-experimentation, from how you meditate, how you have positive gene expression, how you eat, also all this research and like, what are we hearing, what's real, what's not. Well, here's a way for everybody to participate. You have a month of homework, and it starts with this. Where do we land in Antarctica? How far in from the coastline is this cave? Logistics, hiring a ship that can either land or debark. At what locations can we drop supplies? How far can we go with a tracked vehicle before we have to go through dog? Or is it spring? Is it fall? Is it summer? When's the warm time for this area? Whether that's 20 below zero. Look, it's Minnesota. We're supposed to have 20 below all the time, so this is not bad weather for us. But 40 below sucks a little more, but it's not also undoable. So it's really about learning some of these statistics. So next month, and I'm doing my work on it too, it's where's the cave, the one that has been discussed. Where's our closest demarc? Where are we staging, and how are we getting there? And that's a realistic goal for everyone, folks. You might not be able to get to Mars or buy a rocket, but we sure the heck can get a transport ship and the supplies. And this is not a multi-million-dollar expedition. This is a doable expedition.
Well, while Elon Musk is spending millions and billions of dollars to get us out onto Mars and into space and his other various ideas.
Faster.
Well, that's there too. The rest of us could actually start studying the planet that we're living on, because as we know, there is so much more to learn that may even be reflective of what we know out there. I mean, how many times have we found information that helped us on our Earth, that helped us learn something about another planet, or vice versa, at least in the way of observation? That's quite interesting, man.
And look, even if you and we start, the genesis is you and I talking about this now, but oh, well, yeah. So I was already looking into it, because there's these things that we have these burning questions, but this is an obtainable one. So let's just say there's 1,000 people involved in helping us make this happen. And it ends up being a fairly decent size expedition. Even it's not 10 or 12 or 15 people, or the cast of The Mummy or any Indiana Jones movie, right? Let's just say it's like a larger group. The reality is that every single person that would help make this possible would seriously have some bragging rights. Everybody involved. It's this simple. We have a Dropbox file. Everyone who would donate or participate in something like this would be known. I mean, it's not, maybe that's not everyone's interest, but the investment in this is for our world heritage. The investment in this is to further along the dialogue and the conversation. And are there people out there? The first assumption is, oh, secret government military organizations, they don't want us to know. I don't even think it's that. There are also, think of it this way, there are people who have made it their business to chat about this, but not actually go there.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, if you go there and there is nothing, or you say you got the wrong cave, or you go there but you don't actually go there. No, we're not doing that. We're going to go there. And the idea is to track it via live stream, to discuss it in dialogues like this, to send people updates and emails. But we have the technical and we have the ability to go back. And they did it with 1947 and 1949 technology. So let's go back now. Only,
Why not?
excuse me, let's bring our Coleman burners and cook frozen pizzas. I mean, it's just because we don't, whatever. We could go with like prepared meals and just like we're gonna like portage at the Boundary Waters where it's all like compressed packages of goo, and that's what we're gonna live on for 2 months. But I don't think we're setting out to a 3-hour tour. This is definitely going to be a decent expedition. It needs to be funded, but it's not, like you said, this is not tens of millions of dollars to go off planet or launch a rocket and
Right.
refuel something and land again. It's pretty significantly possible for us to, again, also alpining is different than climbing. When you're dealing with going over mountain systems and the way you get over those, and like you said, those poor climbers that were in a perfect storm, except for that whole mutilation thing. The reality is that getting over mountain ranges or tracking down this course is something that everyone listening, this is something, if you don't want to level up on whatever next video game or Netflix and binge your next show, help us find this route. Let's do it. This isn't
That would be awesome.
Yeah, sorry. This is a call to arms.
No, this is great because this is not something that people ask all the time. And, this is a very serious request. If anybody out there in the chat or listening on the wings is interested in helping us out in this respect to help Jared plan this expedition and make it a tangible goal, please let us know. You can email myself or you can email Jared with your ideas or your Google Maps in exploration or whatever you're down to find. Maybe you've been to Antarctica yourself at some point and know a little bit about the land. I don't know every one of you out there, of course, but if anybody has anything to add to that, please feel free and don't hesitate.
Yep, there's logistics on, I'm sure, getting there and permits and all that, but those are all the things that, it's supposed to be open for all countries and for exploration. And there have been many adventurers that have traveled to those locations. I'm at notaliens.com, of course. You can certainly find me there and email me. I have a Not Aliens YouTube channel, and I have a member area. You don't need to go into a member area or buy a book. You could just go to Not Aliens and you can just get my email and contact me. But there is no reason that this shouldn't be a real goal. So I'd rather be able to give people updates in a month about where we're at with that, because I'm working hard on the Grand Canyon. I'm working hard on my New England work. And then there is a large, I am excited about my South American work that I'm planning with an archaeologist, Jennifer Deo. We are working on a South American expedition that we've talked before about engineered soil and megalithic structures and how they're built, and the superstructures. Something, people are interested in finding gold and jewelry and mummies. I'm interested in understanding how these structures are actually being pre-compacted and built. Are they on seismic metamaterials, nanostructures? We still can't figure out the machines that built them or moved them, but in the earth itself, what they're actually sitting on could be one of our most valuable unknowns that literally no one's ever worked on. So these are all things that are happening, and I'm not officially calling everybody out to help, but about this Antarctica thing, it's a giant opening in the earth that can be seen from a decent distance. Our ability to get to that with solid climbers, hardy, it does take a decent level of fitness.
I would imagine.
But it's obtainable even if you're not specifically a mountain climber or an alpiner or or a cold weather person. Those are conditions that you can train yourself for. But as far as going, whether you're part of that or helping establish the logistics of it, the reality is we can do this, and there is a reason there's a P. Reese map with the uniced coastline of Antarctica. There's a reason you have Charles Hapgood's book, The Maps of the Sea Kings. There is just a significant amount of info that we can't solve everything. But if we're going to put our money and our mouths and where we're at towards something, I think this could be pretty exciting.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jared. I can't think of a better expedition to make right now in the way of expanding our own knowledge of this planet. And, for what it's worth, Antarctica really is accessible, especially in the way that you're talking about. I think if you dream big, I mean, God, you imagine some of what these really old time colonial folks had gone through, coming over oceans in these rickety boats with disease and all kinds of other ailments and obstacles that they really had to get through that we don't really consider an issue these days when traveling great distances. So for us to propose something like this in the way of an expedition, I think is very sound. And again, I back that 100% and I'm incredibly excited at the proposal. And again, if you guys have anything that you can help with, I saw that Jim Robinson mentioned that he wanted to help. So, as we said, here are the few ways that you can start participating with this. And that would be very much appreciated. We'd be very grateful. But Jared, we're actually rounding out the end of the show here. I know you mentioned that you're at notaliens.com. Where else can we find you? And where can we buy your book?
Yeah, so you can get the book, of course, on Amazon if you'd like it, and for a few dollars more. Okay, except if you're out of country, then it's even a few more dollars. But you can go to notaliens.com. I sign books. I go to the post office. I will send you a book, but I do have a deal where if you want to get a book, and you can also sign up for memberships to my private area. It's about the cost of espresso every month. But then
Nice.
if you're out of country, I can't get around it. There's basically a $26 fee for me to ship a book from my house, or from the post office. So that's a way to find me. And then tonight, actually, not too long, around 9:00, of course, that Geraldine interview. And that's going to be on Conflict Radio tonight, Conflict Network on YouTube. That'll be tonight at 9. And then, of course, here we are going to be at this. I think we have a lot to do. I think I just gave ourselves too much homework for next month.
It's good. It's good.
But I think this is exciting because for those that do contact us, this is not us kicking tires or kicking a can. This is us looking at the serious logistics. And until when we meet resistance, it's not about that we're not going to meet that. I do want to tell everybody out there, whatever the hurdles are, whatever the permits are, whatever the logistics of retaining a ship, whatever port we leave from, however we get what we got to get to where we got to get, that's part of the adventure. So it's not that we're going to experience no's and objections. It's how far are we realistically able to get on that continent? I think we just started something that's going to be really exciting. I
agree with you, man. Hey, my pleasure. I'm just happy that you're even enlisting me to participate at all in any capacity. So
I got Michael coming to archaeological site in New England. We're going to be at America's Stonehenge.
He's going to be there. Okay, good. Because I was hoping that you were going to say that. I know that I'm going to be meeting up with you for sure, but I was hoping that Conflict Radio would be coming through as well.
Michael's coming. Yes.
That's fantastic. I can't wait. That's going to be in April, right?
End of April. Yes. Two Michaels, two podcasts together.
Two Michaels and two guys who share the same birthday.
That's us.
That's us. We share the same birthday, believe it or not. Jared and I.
Yes, we do. He thought I was joking when I gave him the dates, but we share the same date.
Nearly fell out of my seat. I couldn't believe that he had said the same birthday as I had. And, these synchronicities do not go unacknowledged. Believe me, there's something there, whether it's in the way of recognition, it might be just that, or if it's something more, time will tell. But that is really cool and an interesting aspect that we share between us, considering we get along so well too. I mean, God, I feel like I've known you for years, man.
Oh, I can't wait till you're standing in Antarctica with me going, how the hell did you talk me into this?
I would love it. I would love that to no end. God.
There's no reason not to. Yeah, and it's not going to be cheap, but by God, it is something we need to do now.
Once in a lifetime opportunities, man. Or maybe not, but
except for the other stuff we're going to do. Yeah, we're not going to do this once. We'll roll this into something where we don't stop. It's worth going. It's worth doing.
We really
There's
should.
we might stumble across a couple ancient megalithic cities if we're lucky, but not going to make any assumptions.
There are some very peculiar things sticking up out of the snow and ice there in Antarctica, and Antarctica, and yes, thank you. And we've actually seen some of these through Google Earth images and so forth that really do sort of appear to resemble sort of this intelligent structure. If it's not a statuesque piece or something that resembles a person itself, it's again the structures that we see in other ancient civilizations that are now sort of being observed. And I know you can't 100% trust on Google Earth because it can be manipulated in some way, shape, and form. And also a lot of times these are representing the objects that are there, so we're not actually seeing what it is. But it's still something very interesting to look at as we're moving forward, because this global warming, or whatever you want to call it, is certainly occurring, and we're seeing many consequences of that. And in the wake of it, we're finding different civilizations that have been long buried underwater or under ice.
Yeah, it's really neat that this stuff's being rediscovered. We know there was tropical. We know that there is pre-Jurassic period. There are petrified tree stumps in Antarctica, so we know it was tropical. We knew it was planted. We also know that those tree stumps predate dinosaurs.
See, that's amazing to me. That blows my mind. And again, the implications of understanding that and what we may find next is just unreal to me. And I'm so excited to see what happens in my lifetime, our lifetime, really.
Yeah. Well, we have, hey, don't put it that. No, it's on ours. Don't just put it on me. Whoa. All right.
Thank you very much, Beastrom SNES. Does that have anything to do with the game console, Nintendo? I'm just curious.
Oh,
big gamer. So I'm curious. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, and on that on that note, yeah, I do think that what's going to be fun next month is, for everyone listening, is we have half of a question sheet left. Although we touched some of the bottom items, but that was just that's just what Michael came up with just for the next one, which was this one. But now I put a third of our show, or maybe half, on how are the updates going for actual expedition. And the reality is, I don't think it needs to be a big surprise. I don't think it's going to slow us down. I don't think anyone's going to put barriers that won't make these trips possible. The issue is, I think everyone watches these shows hoping to learn something new, but also to participate. And that kind of help right there. The reality is that, it's time to do. And I think that the people who do help and are involved get some street cred. And because of this amazing internet, it's a lot. I think it's a lot cooler to say these 300, 500 people made this thing happen for 8 billion people to know more, and the rest of the world forever and for history to come, than to say it was XYZ museum that did it. I think it's really exciting to be able to put it out there and realize that the people out there could actually sit here, hear this, and go, yeah, it got thrown out there, and then it happened.
Then we followed it up, and now we're following it as it's happening. It was born.
Yeah.
At this point, I was there, and I heard the plans being put together. I saw the wheels in motion. I mean, I would love to be one of those people too. If I was in the chat or something and seeing something along these lines, I would find it just as exciting as where I'm sitting now. But thank you very much, Jared, for coming on again tonight. I had a fantastic time with you, as always. I expect nothing less, because that's just the way it is. We always have a great time. And, you will be back next month, and we'll let everybody know about the exact date. I think we've decided on a couple ideas here and settled. But I'll let everybody know exactly when we're having Jared back on, so you can tune back in. Great turnout tonight, guys. Thank you very much for being here with us. I appreciate that. So, Jared, for the moment, I'm going to take you off, and then I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera, as we usually do. Thank you, mate. Oh, man, what a fantastic show. I really love talking to people like Jared Murphy. He's full of innovation, and his ideas are not as common in the way of concept, I think, that you might find talking to some folks on the circuit or within the field who have been basically regurgitating certain principles that have been thrown out there for a very long time and stepped on, digested, reiterated in so many different ways. And it's not really their words. It's not really their ideas. And I'm not saying that they're always aware of that. It's something that they may be taking in within themselves through their research and then kind of purging it again in an unconscious sense. And I don't find that to be anything close to the truth when it comes to Jared Murphy. All his ideas have a very original feel about them, and the angle, as you can tell, listening to him, is something unique. So I'm always honored to have Jared Murphy here on the show. And as I mentioned, he will be a regular, appearing at least once a month here on Dark Hour Paranormal to discuss a lot of these different questions. And believe me, he wasn't kidding when he said we've only gotten to a couple of the topics that we were suggesting to talk about this evening, because that's what happens. I think we actually got to about 2 questions out of the 10 or 11 that we had set. So get ready. We're going to be doing more shows with Jared in the future. And I thank you very much once again for you guys being here tonight. My moderators, you guys are a fantastic team. I couldn't ask for anything better. Every one of you super chatting tonight, thank you so much. As you know, we survive on super chats over here at the show, and I appreciate that again with my whole heart and your presence and your energy, guys. We have one of the coolest chats that I've ever seen. I'm not just saying that because it's my show, but because it's the truth. And I go to a lot of shows and I see the energy that's in there. You guys are the best. People tell me all the time they feel it. So thank you very much for being here, guys. Stay magical, stay inquisitive, stay indoors in case it starts snowing out or raining wherever you are. I really got to work on that one. That was terrible, wasn't it? That's okay. We're getting there. I'm resolved for the moment. Ooh, the energy in here is high. Very buzzing. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you once again. We'll be back later on this week, and you will see somebody else. I'm not going to say who. It's we're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave it at that. You guys will enjoy who comes up next. Should be around Thursday or Friday. Keep your eyes peeled and have a wonderful rest of your evening, guys. Thank you so much. Go watch Countdown to Disclosure. It was released February 16th. Go watch this movie, guys. Fantastic. Mr. DB Cooper, thank you very much, brother. I see your $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much, buddy. And, of course, Misty Dragons, thanks for the super sticker. Let me throw these up real quick so everybody can see. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. Good night.